Thanks for joining us today, Michelle.
Hi, thanks for having me.
I'm so excited to bring you Michelle's story because I have wanted forever to get a physician on who is no longer practicing clinical medicine. And Michelle not only is that physician, she helps other people become that physician. And if that is the choice that they are trying to make, she is the host of Physicians Helping Physicians podcast and website. And her jam is to improve the wellness of people all over, right, Michelle? But with a special passion for docs, if I understand correctly.
Yeah, that's right. So I thought I wanted to be a doctor for my entire life. In fourth grade, I told my father that I was going to be a doctor, and then it was like full speed ahead. You know how we all are. We just get on that train and we don't get off. And lucky for me, it worked out, and I got into med school in my first try, even though my grades were not awesome. But med school was great. It was a dream come true. I met so many really amazing people, and some of my best friends, who are still my best friends, I met in medical school. So I was very happy. And then I got to my third year and I started realizing that patient care might not be for me. And that is not a good realization to make when you are going through medical school and the goal is to take care of patients. So when I told people that, and I sort of tried it out on a few people, I got a very negative response, as you might imagine. I mean, I wasn't comfortable with it myself, but people thought I was crazy and something was wrong with me. And of course, that didn't help me either because I was very young. I'd gone straight through. So I was like 23, 24, 25, I forget at this point. But I knew that I could not see patients over and over in an office situation for the next 40 years. And so I chose pathology. And I thought that was it. I thought that would enable me to use what I had done for so long, my background, my education, just my dream, and still actually tolerate my work. Now, the problem is I ended up in a pretty malignant residency, and I won't go into where that was, but I ended up leaving pretty early on, very negative culture, no mentorship. And I tell people, had I had mentors, things might have turned out differently for me. But I did end up leaving fully thinking that I would go back.
Wow. And okay, I by the way, let's stop and just appreciate the fact that you said something that is so hard to say, and I love the way you phrased it because I've never found probably the best phrasing for it, and now I've got one. Patient care isn't for me. That is a very good. I mean, because it's so hard. We just recorded for Michelle's podcast before this recording, and we were talking about what a taboo it is to say, oh, I want to quit medicine because people assume that you went in it to help people. But there are many ways of helping people. Not all of them require you sitting in a room one on one, having them talk, tell you their problems and you giving solutions all day, every day. Many, many
Right.
other ways. And not everybody who decides to help people is cut out for that patient care path. So thank you very much for just giving all doctors permission to say that sometimes that's not for me. And by the way, when people go straight into radiology or straight into pathology and we don't ask them why, and they never bring up that they're not a big fans of patient care, they probably actually are, or else they would not have chosen those fields. But nobody says, "Oh, you just went into radiology. What's wrong with you?" It's only if you dive deep into their rationale that anybody is going to start judging. So I appreciate you bringing that up and being very open and honest with us about that. So you have quit pathology, at least temporarily. What was your next step?
Well, and thanks, by the way, because it did take me a long time to be able to articulate that and in a comfortable way, because it is really hard to leave and it's really hard to make that decision. And so it didn't come quite as easy 20 years ago. But this is the early 2000s, and I ended up going into a medical device job because when you quit medicine, especially back then, without all the Facebook groups and all the conferences and it being so easy to talk about, people don't know what to tell you to do, and you don't know what to do. So you think insurance and pharmacy or pharmacology or medical device or maybe one other thing, but there are just not a whole lot of options. At least you don't know what they are. So I ended up going into a medical device company and working there for a year. And that showed me how many gaps I really had because I'd gone straight through into medical school to training, and I'd missed a lot of the things that people get when they're considering other careers or taking business classes or, just doing all the things that we often don't do on our paths to becoming doctors. And so I thought, okay, I need to fill these gaps and I'll go back to school to do it. And that was a little bit of an easy decision because school has always come easy to me and I like school. So going back to school was not a problem. But the second time I did it, I tried to be a little bit more purposeful about some of the things that I hadn't done the first time. So networking, for example. Most doctors hate networking or they don't understand it or they don't know how to do it. They may think, oh, it's just giving people compliments or brown nosing or doing things that you don't really want to do. But networking can be a lot of fun. And so I kind of learned how to network and how to help other people, which is what networking really is. And so that was one example of the things that I tried to get my second time around in school. So.
Cool. Okay. I just wanted to stop because I realized I didn't ask maybe the most important question. How did you conquer any fears that might have popped up when you contemplating leaving the residency in the first place?
Oh, it was very hard. I'm a first generation doctor. My father was thrilled that I went to medical school, and everyone thought it was a great idea. Everyone had supported me along the way. I had great friends. So everyone that I talked to told me not to quit. And even the word quit is, for a lot of people, very negative connotations. So I really didn't want to, but I was so unhappy and I am not willing to settle. So I'm that type of person who is just not willing to settle. Even with my husband, people told me you will never get married because you cannot find someone that you're looking for. Well, I did. And he's my soulmate and we have an amazing child and amazing life together. So I just was not willing to settle for the next 40 or 50 years doing something that I absolutely did not enjoy doing. I wasn't good at, and I knew that something bad was going to happen. I didn't know what it was, but I mean, I cut myself in residency and had to go through the whole HIV scare and everything. And that wasn't the impetus that caused me to say, okay, enough is enough. But that was just another piece of it. I just knew this is not going to work right now. So that was it. It wasn't really that I was being so resilient. It was that I just had no choice.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. And I can't imagine, you're right. It was a different time where the pressures were much stronger to stay in medicine. Now, like you said, she and I are in many Facebook groups that applaud people who have the courage to step up and say, this isn't for me. But back in the day, that was not the case. But you got to the point that a lot of people do where you realize that your sanity is on the line. So whatever anybody else is saying, the pressure's on them to, oh no, you've got to stick to it, or what's going to happen if you leave? Well, if I stay, I'm suffering soul suicide. So why, there's no option. And you also made a great point of, you said, I'm leaving for now. And I am totally fine with people calling it a quit if they unquit later. Quits don't have to be permanent. Most things can be reversed. So when you left, had you said, okay, dear residency, I'm going to leave, take a year off, and when you plan to go back, were you planning to go back to that residency or were you planning to switch?
I didn't really know. I knew I wasn't doing well because I wasn't happy. And that was a new thing for me too, because, most of us type A personalities, everything comes easy to us. We do everything right. So I really didn't know, but I finished everything out enough so that I could go back and I didn't burn bridges and I kept things as open as possible. Yes. Which is one thing you tell people to do, I know.
Yes, absolutely. I love that. And you also did something that I would love to point out, which is the purposeful second schooling. I think a lot of people get to this point, and by the way, sign me up for this list of people, where we don't know what to do, but we know we are good at school and we like school. So let's just go back to school. And it's kind of this buffer time where we think like, okay, I'll have an extra degree, so that gives me more options. But for a lot of people, then they'll also have extra debt. So it's really important to do what you did and say, okay, yes, I kind of head down from fourth grade, went through this whole thing the first time. Not a ton of thought maybe had gone into it, but now I'm going to put the requisite thought in, because as we were talking on my podcast, my law school didn't cost anything, but if it had to cost something, I could not have gone. A lot of docs are in that point. We've put so much into medical school. Can we afford to now get another degree? if you're going to pursue that, please put that same amount of thought into it like you did, so that you're not paying now for 2 degrees that you may or may not be using.
Absolutely. I mean, I tell people really think hard before you go back to school because it wasn't something I had to do. I thought I did, but now on the other side, I can say that we don't need another degree to do something different. You don't need an MBA, you don't need an MHA like I have, you don't need a law degree. If you want to do something different, just go do it. Getting the experience these days is so much easier than it used to be. There are a lot more tools and resources. There's a lot more online. Actually, it's a great place to be these days when you figure out that you don't want to do what you were trained to do.
Yes, yes, I love that hopeful breath of fresh air to people. This is a great time to be confused about what you want to do or to quit whatever isn't working for you. Even if it's not just your job, there's lots of options in many areas, but specifically in careers, you don't have to go back to school. I was just interviewed for an article on what to tell people who want to go back to school, and I think mine was like, wait, hold on,
Yeah.
why are you going back to school?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Really. I mean, think long and hard. It's going to be a lot of money and a lot of time. And school typically is archaic. So you are not trained to actually work in the job that it is you are going to school for. So if you really want to do that, first of all, make sure you know what that work's going to be like. And, and second of all, maybe go get a little experience there first. Make sure that that degree is going to get you to where you want to be, because otherwise it's just, I mean, I'm not going to say it's a waste because you can never go wrong getting an education, but it may not be that panacea that you think it's going to be.
Correct, correct. And you just brought up something that, I wish more people knew. That law, like for example, law school, which is what I did when I felt like, I want to go back to school. It did not teach me how to practice law.
Mm-hmm.
And for it to have taught me that, I would have had to have done internship after internship or externship. And since I was still working in medicine, that was not possible. There were only so many hours in the day. And that's exactly right. Is that I got out with a law degree and everybody's like, you're going to go practice law now? And I was like, I can't really. I don't have that. I don't have the skills to do it. So you're right. The way that most schooling is set up is not. But alternatively, you can go take the Seth Godin Alt MBA or something that is a little bit less traditional that gives you a lot more real world type experience. I mean, I've never done it, but as I understand, it's less archaic than let's go to the university and get some book learning, and maybe not so much of the useful experience. Okay, so you are now working. Did you stay working in your medical device company while you're in your MHA program?
For a while, I did. I did the executive program. And then I found out that there was something called a business residency. So I thought, wow, that is exactly what I need. So I left the medical device job. And after I finished the schooling, I did a business residency. And funny, it was at the same hospital that I did my internship at. So how cool is that to get to see things from the C-suite in a totally different way, totally different perspective. I went down to the pathology department and talked to them, and it was fascinating, really was. But the thing is, I realized I didn't want to run a hospital either. So I didn't quite have it all together yet. I've always been very interested in health and wellness. I've been a runner for probably my whole life. I played soccer before that, and just interested in eating well and all of those things. So I thought I really want to do something with prevention or lifestyle, and lifestyle medicine wasn't a thing. It was still called complementary and alternative medicine, if you remember that.
Damn.
I mean,
Yes.
yeah, I know I look young, but I am much older than I look. So those things didn't exist. And had they, I might have ended up going down another path. But what I ultimately ended up finding was corporate wellness. And that was a great fit for me. So I found a conference on my own, and the business residency sent me to one conference a year. And so I went, and it was amazing. I learned all the key words that I needed. I learned how to speak the language, and I came back and I started just reaching out to different firms and telling them that this is what I do. These are my degrees. And I got hired. And so that was amazing. I was director of wellness and medical management for a brokerage firm. And that was my dream job. I did that for 3 years and I loved it, but I outgrew it. But that was my dream job.
Wow. And so it was your dream job. You got it. And it continued to be dreamy. It wasn't somehow like right along the way, you and I both have stories where we thought something was going to be amazing. Then we tried it. Not so amazing. But so this
Right.
was actually as great as it sounded.
It really was. It was perfect for me, a perfect fit. It offered me the lifestyle that I needed, and it gave me the work that I was interested in doing. So it kind of combined the business and the medicine. And that was very interesting to me, even though I always shied away from business and thought I was not a good fit for business. But turns out I am. And what I find in a lot of people that are thinking about leaving and then do leave is that that first job you get into is often a leapfrog job, and you do it for a couple of years and you grow so much personally and professionally and in ways that you can't grow in medicine, that you just either outgrow it or you get to a point where you're ready for that next step, because we're all smart, very accomplished people and we get it pretty quickly. So that's what I tell people. But along the way, I started talking about my story, and that's how doctors started to find me, and that's how I formed my company.
Very cool. Can you tell us what your company currently does?
Yes. So in 2008, I formalized what I'd been doing for a while, which is helping doctors who didn't want to practice anymore. And I never planned on doing this. So there are a lot of coaches out there now, which is great because there were no coaches when I was doing it. Uh, but I never meant to be a mentor or a coach. I just left and kind of figured it out, as I've told you. And so along the way, I started telling my story and talking about a little bit of the malignancies within the culture of medicine and how we're mean to each other and what I did to figure it out and how I wrote a resume and a cover letter and all these things that we never learn how to do. And so other doctors started to find me and they would tell me, I'm not happy either. And they'd been practicing for 5, 10, 20 years, but they wanted something else, but they didn't know how to do it. And they had not had anyone say it was okay before. So I was maybe their first, the first time that they had heard that, and they'd seen someone else do something who was a doctor. And so I just started to help them with what had helped me. And in 2008, I became legal. I actually founded the LLC because I'd been doing it for so long. And just really started out with an hourly rate, and then just figured out my pricing and started helping doctors over and over and became kind of a word of mouth thing. So, yeah.
Ah, very cool. I think I misrepresented you in the intro. You help exclusively doctors.
Well, not anymore. Now
Okay.
I work with a lot of professionals,
Okay.
but it was exclusively doctors for a long time because again, I never planned on starting this business. I just helped other doctors who wanted to do what I did. And about 2015, so after I had been doing it for about 8 years, I started to get some calls from pharmacists and a couple attorneys. I do some peer coaching work for some large companies, Fortune 500 companies, and they would send me some of their professionals. And so I worked with some of the different professionals, and I started to realize the things I was telling doctors was applicable to every professional, every mid-career professional. I mean, not every, but most
Yeah.
mid-career professionals. And so I started to scale the business by working with others. And so that turned into kind of a side arm of the business, which is called Scout a Career. And that's for all professionals. So I've worked with people in finance, I've worked with people in education, I've worked with pharmacists, PAs, PTs, midwives, attorneys, just all kinds of people who come to me and say, I know you help doctors. I don't want to do what I was trained to do. I'm not a doctor. Can you help me? And now I can.
Oh, I love that. I love that. I love that. That's a very exciting. Now, when we were recording your episode, we were talking a little bit about helping doctors quit helping doctors over the difficult part of their quit, which is often the identity portion.
Mhm.
Is there something you can tell the listeners about how you help? And now, again, not just doctors, you're working with high level CEOs and pharmacists and other people that may have wrapped their identity around what they do, or they
Mhm.
have merged those things. What I do is who I am. And
Yeah.
then they have to quit that. What kinds of advice do you have for people who might be in that situation?
Yeah. It's hard, but everyone goes through it because we do spend so much time training either in school or in the workforce to do what it is we are trained to do. So PhDs have this, teachers have it, attorneys, doctors. I think it's always going to be there. So addressing it is the first step, and knowing that it's going to be difficult and knowing that you tie your identity around what it is you were trained to do is really important. And it's okay. It is really okay. And you're never no longer a doctor or no longer an attorney. You will always have that degree and you will always have those skills, and you can go back. That's the great thing. You can fall back on these things, but what are you running towards? And that's the biggest thing, because people aren't running away from something, they're running towards something. And having that perspective and communicating that perspective is really, really important, both for your own mindset and for those people that you're talking to, because you're giving your elevator pitch all the time to people. And you don't want them to think, oh, this is just a doctor who doesn't want to do what they're trained to do anymore. That is really negative. You want them to think, oh, wow, cool. This is a doctor who has some experience in business and is ready for that next strategic step and wants to do something to have a little bit more impact on the world. And I mean, which one sounds more positive, right?
Absolutely. Yes. Such a mindset reframe and an outward how you relate to the world reframe, so that exactly like I say, if you're a barista in LA and you quit being a barista because you got your big break in Hollywood, nobody's like, "Oh, what a quitter." They just
Yeah.
say, "You made it," right? It's all just a reframe and a perspective shift and how you're looking at things. So I absolutely love the what are you running toward as opposed to focusing on the past and what you're leaving.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks.
Absolutely. Michelle, where can people find you if they would like to learn more?
Yeah, well, so I have a website. It's physicians.com. You can really just Google physicians helping physicians or my name. I'm very Googleable. And if you're a non-physician and you're looking at transitioning, you can go to scoutacareer.com. That's the separate website. I am having a meeting for the first time in April, bringing together a bunch of doctors to talk about this and to get some mentoring. It's going to be amazing. I have made sure that some people who have transitioned are willing to mentor you for free. And I have a TV anchor veteran, 25-year veteran, who's willing to come and do some media training for free. I have a bunch of people coming together who want to talk about non-clinical careers and want to help everybody network and figure out how to do this for themselves for free. So the conference registration fee is a little bit different as well. So the conference isn't 100% for free, but I guess it could be because it's a donation-based system. I've put my own money into this because I believe in it so much, and I wish that there had been something like this for me. So I do ask that anyone who decides to come make a donation, and it can be small, 200, 100. I mean, it's really up to you. It really is. And if you can't make a donation, then don't. And, maybe in the future, you're going to be able to help someone else if you're helped. But the conference is in Austin, Texas in April of 2019. And you can sign up on the website, see the schedule, all that kind of stuff. So we're really excited. I know you're going to be there, and I'm really excited about that.
Yes, I'm very excited to go. And we'll be talking a little bit about strategic quitting there. And I'm looking forward to learning all of the other aspects that people are going to talk about. And it's in Austin, which is one of my favorite places. So, yeah, that is on my calendar in big red letters. I'm very excited about that. And I'm just so thrilled that we met, because I think you're like my soul sister spirit animal in this, because seriously, you just have had that strategic quitting mindset from the get-go, and you're helping other people do it, which I absolutely love. So thank you so much for joining us today, Michelle.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for having me.
All right, for everybody else out there, until next time, happy quitting.